Hello, everybody. Happy, what is this, Thursday. Um, I am very, very happy today, if you can't tell, because the sun is shining here in Georgia. We have seen temperatures this week in the 80s. Y'all, it cannot get any better. I am so super excited. Now, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Georgia's weather. If you live here, you definitely are. If you're tuning in from somewhere else, let me tell you about Georgia's weather. There's a running joke that we have like a pre-spring before spring. So we have a pre-spring where all of the flowers bloom, everything's becoming just absolutely beautiful. Outside, if I could show you my front yard right now, my flowers are blooming. I'm just happy as a clam because it feels so spring-like. And I actually sweat yesterday because I had on a sweater because it was a little chilly in the morning. And then it got really, really hot in the afternoon, but it was okay. I was happy to sweat because I was just happy it was warm. And now my flowers are blooming, and I bet you money next week it's going to freeze and all my flowers are going to die. But I'm going to take it because I've had a couple of days of sunshine, no rain, and I am just so happy. So thank y'all for joining. Thank you for tuning in. Tell me, where are you tuning in from? Where are you guys all over the country? I know last week we had a couple people from New York. See who we get this week. So I wonder what the weather's like up there. I don't know if it's anything like here in Georgia because it's beautiful today. I think we got up to 81 degrees, which, if you ask me, is fantastic. If you ask my husband, he feels like he's about to die, but that's okay. That's part of being a Georgian. You know, we've got all of the seasons. That's why a lot of people move here. Oh, ATAC, they're coming in from the ATL. Good to have you guys. So, one of the things we were going to talk about today is something that I have been talking with some other people about, is kind of what we're seeing with the market as far as the cycle that we're in. Because a lot of people are like, Ashley, I just don't have any peace about the market. It's all over the place. You know, one week we're at 5.9%, the next week we're at 6. So I was going to talk to you guys about what we're seeing, because I feel like a lot of people do not understand that this is a century long, or even not century, I'm sorry, decade long, century long, decade long issue that has been coming up. So when the market crashed in 2008, we really started to see things come about. Before that, I guess 2006, 2007, we started to see the writing on the wall. If you really studied the market, you probably saw this coming long before, because real estate is cyclical. It's been cyclical since the 1800s. You can see about every 20 years or so, give or take, except for a couple of moments like 1979. That was a shorter one, but I really think that that was brought on by very specific circumstances. Real estate, about every 20 years, has a correction. And in 2008, it had actually been predicted long before that 2008 to 2009 was going to be the year that we saw a correction. And darn if they weren't spot on. And 2008 came on because of bad lending. They were giving a lot of the arms, the 2-1 arm, 5-1 arm, and they were qualifying people for the lower mortgage rate, but they weren't qualifying them at the higher mortgage rate. So when the mortgage rate then adjusted, those people could no longer afford. And people were borrowing against their homes left and right. And that is what created so much turmoil when it came to the 2008 market correction. So during that, builders basically stopped building, and they never really started building the way that they were before. They would build when you put a home under contract. And so there was not a lot of standing inventory. So when somebody needed to come in and get something quickly, close in 30 days, close in 45 days, there weren't really those options. So now if you couple that generational shortage of homes, and then you put together the monumental prices of affordability for construction costs the last couple of years, that obviously made builder home prices rise. We had an influx of buyers because you have a lot of people that are aging up into home buying time. And so when you have all of that put together, you have the recipe for a disaster because there's not enough homes to supply the buyers that are in need. And so when that happens, supply and demand, everybody knows how that goes. If you do not have enough, people are going to pay more and more and more. Couple that with politics going on. A lot of people are leaving specific states such as California, New York, New Jersey, Miami. Um, we saw a lot of influx to Georgia, Austin, Texas, Nevada, I know is a lot, Arizona. So when you have all of that coupled with we already have a lot of people here that are needing to buy, and now we've got even more people here needing to buy. We've got companies coming here that are bringing their people. That's a lot. So that's kind of how the last 2 years ended up the way that it did. And so another factor that went into that that was really kind of tough to swallow was investors. And investors really started to buy up the market. I've shared with you guys on the channel before. In 2021, 33% of sales were contributed to investors alone. And so that took up a lot of the affordable housing. Anything that was $500,000 or less, we were watching them just buy up, scoop up. And it really started to hinder the affordability factor because they were normally we see them 500,000 and below. We were starting to see them go above that. We were starting to really see them go into any market and buy up anything that they possibly could. They're coming in with cash fulls of pockets full of cash. And your typical American can't compete with that. We don't have the kind of money that these investment companies do. In past times, investors were kind of like you and I, mom and pop investors that have a house here or a house there. We weren't really competing with companies like Orchard or Open Door that were coming in to buy up everything. And so with that really came a big challenge. And so I am very excited. I'm going to share with you guys some information here. Investors buying fewer homes, but market share expected to hold steady. So I've been seeing a couple of these. Check out this next one. Real estate investors are retreating. Here's where the typical person has a better chance to buy. Well, y'all, this is exciting news. So it doesn't sound like they're going to be selling what they have, but it does sound like they're going to be holding off on purchasing more. Obviously, with interest rates going higher, that kind of makes them back off. They're not getting the great deals that they were as far as interest rates. However, a lot of them were buying in cash. So I would argue this point of, is that really what's changing them, or are they seeing the market shift? Because right now we have seen prices come down a little bit. We have not seen them come down substantially like a lot of people were hoping. And the crazy thing for me is with interest rates rising, prices have not come down substantially, but interest rates have gone up substantially. We had seen a little bit of a moment where we were seeing prices start to come down. Buyers were not coming out anymore. There was kind of like this lull last year, last fall. And now all of a sudden, I'm really starting to see it pick up. We're starting to see more people get out there. We're starting to see buyers coming back onto the market. And in Georgia, our spring market is one where it starts to pick up. But I truthfully wasn't really sure what that was going to look like with the way that we had seen the market in the fall. And so last weekend, I shared with you guys, if you saw on Instagram, I actually pulled up to show a property. It was about 7:30 at night and just getting dark here. There was a line of people waiting to see this house. And it shocked me. It really did. It shocked me that there was a line of people, and I felt like I was, a year ago where the market was, I'm waiting in line with my clients to get in to see this property. And it ended up going into a multiple offer situation. Another offer that I submitted this weekend, we were one of 3 offers, so another multiple offer situation. So the market is still strong here in Georgia. Now, I'm not going to say that it's like that on every home because it's not. It's definitely not. But the homes that are move in ready, the homes that are listed appropriately or sometimes even under market value to get attention and get people's focus on it, those homes are going quickly. And so, with that, it really begs one to think what is going to happen with this upcoming market because the Fed keeps raising rates in order to get inflation under control. We saw rates go down a couple weeks ago to 5.9, then almost immediately come back up to over 6. I will not be surprised with what happened this week if we see them get to over 7%. And at what point is that going to change the market? Because currently we're still seeing multiple offers on homes. We're still seeing lines coming back with the spring market. And so it really makes me wonder, when are we going to start to see a shift? So if you look here, it does excite me that we're starting to see investors retreat. I feel like this is what is going to give us a little bit of hope for affordability. Metro Atlanta was actually one of the number one places investors were buying up properties. And so it makes you wonder, is the American dream for rent? I remember last year, I started to hear about properties or not properties, but neighborhoods in Arizona that were for rent. The entire neighborhood was for rent, but we didn't see that a lot here in Georgia yet. However, that very, very quickly shifted. And there are multiple communities that are, full neighborhoods. It's not one or two homes. Used to, when a builder would build a neighborhood, you would have a cap rate that's in the bylaws of the HOA that would say a certain percentage could be rental properties. The other ones had to be homeowner occupied. And so most of the time that was about, 10 to 12% could be rentals. And then you could have the rest of them had to be homeowners. Now you've got builders building entire neighborhoods to rent the entire neighborhood. Some of them here locally, there's a $300,000 price point neighborhood that's in Oakwood. Then there right down the street is in Swanee. It's a 55 plus community. Then I saw another one. If you're over in Flowery Branch, you've got Chateau Del Webb, which is a 55 plus community. Across the street from that is Deaton Creek. Right down the street is the hospital. And then you have a new community that's going in that is 55 plus, and it is going to be rentals as well. And I have mixed emotions about this. Tell me what you guys think about 55 plus communities that are now going towards rental direction instead of ownership. Hey, Anthony, how do you think the high interest rates will impact the spring market? Will things be slower than normal? Anthony, that is a fantastic question. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know because right now, I really thought that we were going to start to see rates coming back down. But with rates doing what they did this week, I feel like we're going to go over 7%, but we are not seeing a slowdown in purchasing. We've actually seen them continue to go up. And so with that, it's this cycle, right? And Anthony, you and I talked about this before. The cycle that we're stuck in, builders did not continue to build after the 2008 crash. So we have 10 years worth of lack of building. And so now builders are trying to catch up. Well, now we have buyers that need houses. We have that influx of people from other states. We have companies that are moving here, like I mentioned, that are bringing their people here. Then we have people that are now coming of age, that next generation coming up that are wanting to get into homes. And we don't have properties for them. Then you had the investors. So you have so many buyers that have come to the market. Well, now people that in the last, usually people stay in their home. They say statistics show that people stay in their home 7 to 10 years. Well, if you've purchased a home in the last 10 years, you're probably anywhere from 2% interest rate to 4.5% interest rate. I know I bought my home in it's been about 12 years, and I was at a 4.5% interest rate when I bought then. Obviously, so if you've bought in the last 12 years, you're at 4.5% or less. Well, if interest rates are at 6 to 7% right now, why would you sell your home? Why would you get into a new interest rate that is more than what you currently have? So people aren't wanting to sell their properties. Well, so now we don't have resale options. So inventory consistently has been at a negative. I think to be in a buyer's market, you've got to have at least 6 months worth of inventory. For a long time, we only had about 1 to 2 months. Now we're at 4 months inventory. We're still not enough. We still don't have enough inventory to supply the buyer demand that is there. So it doesn't matter what interest rates are at. We're continuing to see multiple offers. We're continuing to see buyers flood the market. So as it sits right now, I think we're still going to see a hot spring market. I think we're still going to see multiple offers. Now, don't get me wrong. We are not going to see 10 to 20 offers. We're not going to see $100,000 over asking price like we have the last couple of years. That ship has sailed. It is over. What we are going to see is 2 or 3 people bidding on the same home. What we are going to see is maybe $5,000 towards closing cost, or buyers asking for the seller to buy down their rate. That's another option that you have to look at. I would caution people, though. Again, I'm not a lender, so that's a disclaimer. Talk to your lender, or I can very much connect you with the lenders that I work with regularly. Buying down the rate is helpful in some fashion. But what happens when you put $30,000 down on buying a rate down and then rates correct later on in the year? You just lost that $30,000 because now rates corrected and you could have just refinanced. You could have used that $30,000 or $15,000, however much you use. You could have used that as a down payment. You could have used that as closing costs. So really make sure that you're looking at the numbers, you're talking to the lender, you're looking at all of the options for you, because you don't want to leave money on the table. You don't want to have the seller provide funds for you that later on down the line almost canceled themselves out. I will say one of the things that we've seen is those adjustable rates again, and a lot of people are really fearful of those. I will say that it's very different than previous, due to the fact of adjustable rates before. If you came in and they were giving you a 5% interest rate that would adjust up 2 points, and so now then you were going to be at 7%. They were not qualifying you based off of 7%. They were only qualifying you off of the 5%. That's an issue, because if that mortgage rate now adjusts to 7%, you can't refinance because maybe interest rates haven't come down. And now you're at 7% and you can't afford that home. Now you've got a problem. Now you can't afford your house anymore and you're going into foreclosure or a short sale situation. And so that now they are qualifying people on a higher rate. So if they're putting you at a 5%, but you're looking at a 7% down the road, they're qualifying you at 7% to make sure if interest rates never were to come down and you could not refinance, can you afford the property at 7%? And if you can, then you can do that adjustable rate. And so that is something that I've actually seen people using as a tool to get in, because a lot of people do believe, and I'm one of them, that interest rates are going to come down later this year. I think right now we just have this volatile market going up and down because the lack of inventory is driving people to still make multiple offers. So then the Fed is looking and saying, y'all aren't listening. We're going to raise those rates again. And so we're seeing different things happening, but I think that we're going to have a strong spring season, Anthony. I really do. So if you look here also, looking at these investors, it talks about the investors are buying less, but the market share is going to hold steady. So they consistently are going to hold on to what they have. They're not going to be putting that on the market. We started to see Opendoor start to sell off some of their properties before, and that doesn't seem to be something that they're going to be consistently doing. I have seen people, or I've seen Opendoor kind of backing off from that. I haven't seen as many of their properties going up. For a little while there, the last couple of months, they started to put more of their properties up, and that was a help. I actually have 2 clients that were able to get into Opendoor properties at an affordable price. Now, obviously, they needed a little bit of work on the interior, but it wasn't anything substantial, and it was an affordable option for them to get into. Um, However, we have not seen quite as few or quite as many of those properties coming onto the market. So it'll be interesting to see what is going to happen next. So, according to an analysis this month, home purchases by investors dropped 21% from the same time in 2021. 21%, that's huge. So, from this time in 2022 to now, we've seen a 21% drop from investors. So that is very exciting because, as I mentioned, in 2021, we had 33% of the home buyers were investors. So if they've dropped 21%, that's definitely leveling out the playing field. And so a lot of home buyers are still grappling with high costs, but thankfully, that's leveled out the playing field, and you're not having to go into the bidding wars against some of these cash investors that we were looking at in 2021 and early 2022. So that's definitely leveling out the playing field. And that's exciting for housing affordability, because that has been one of the biggest things that we have struggled with recently is affordability. There's not a lot of affordable housing. Right now, I actually was at a listing that I'm about to put on tomorrow. It's in Kennesaw. It's a townhome in unit, $300,000. Super excited because it's an affordable option for people. So I'm very excited to see affordable options. What do you guys think? Drop a message in the comments about what you think this market is looking like. Are we seeing affordable options coming up? What do you guys think about the rental situations and whole neighborhoods coming up as rental options? I think that that is something we're going to see more of. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So I definitely am a little bit concerned about how that's going to play into things, because if we're seeing new communities come up, new construction come up, but then they're not even an option to purchase, what is that going to look like? So, one of the things I wanted to dive into is the cheapest places to buy a home. This is something that comes up all of the time, and a question that I get all of the time. Super excited. So if you look here, I know I've mentioned this before, but in the top 10, Columbia, South Carolina, which is not, terribly far from us, but Augusta, Georgia is rated in the top 10 most affordable places to live. And so that's super exciting. And we've talked about Augusta before. And one of the funny things that, I noticed and wanted to bring to people's attention is one of the the number one spot by Yahoo Finance is in Ohio. The number one most affordable place to live is in Ohio. However, it's the most affordable place to live. However, it also has the lowest median household income. And so if you look at income versus affordability, it continues to rise. So Augusta has a little bit higher median list price, but they also have a higher median household income. So it kind of balances and levels each other out. Columbia, South Carolina is in the top 10. So the Southeast, we're still holding our own. Augusta is one of those places that has been famous for, obviously, the Masters. It's also famous for a lot of other things over there. There's a lot of growth going on. Will Augusta stay one of the most affordable? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Anthony, I've seen surveys where younger generations prefer rent over buy. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I've actually had a lot of new clients that are in the 25 to 30 age range. And I was talking to them about that because they've been renting for quite some time. And they brought up the fact that they're looking at their parents and then they're looking at their grandparents. And a lot of them have built generational wealth through owning real estate. And so they wanted to rent for a while, but now they're really starting to see the benefits of owning a property, not for themselves necessarily right now, but for down the road. If they want to be able to get into a home down the road, they're fearful that they're not going to be able to afford it 10 years down the road. And that's something that I actually was studying looking at my own property. My husband and I bought our first home in 2009, 2010. So it was when the market was down. And we bought that house in Flowery Branch, very nice, 4-bedroom, not your typical first-time homebuyer home, but it was because the market was low. And we bought that house for $196,000. We were young, we were in our mid-20s, and we ended up selling it a few years later, moved to Swanee with our kids. That home just resold last year, and it sold for close to $600,000. That's a $400,000 gain in equity if I had kept that property. So these young people are looking at the fact of what they can buy now. They're seeing over a 10 to 15 year period that home gained $400,000 worth of equity. We may not see that much gain between now and 10 years over the next 10 years because we just saw a ton of gains over the last 2 years. But a lot of them have come to me and said, Ashley, I'm fearful that I'm not going to be able to afford anything if I wait. And so it's interesting to think about what the young generation is going to do. ATAC, I think that rental neighborhoods will eventually make home ownership for the middle class impossible. I I 100% agree. The lower and middle class is definitely going to have that to compete with. So seeing new construction, and a lot of people are wanting new construction because they don't want to have a resale. They don't want to have older homes that they're going to have to do work to. If you're competing with new construction that is only available for rent, it's not available for purchase. I have to say, I 100% agree with you. Anthony, if there are title rental regulations, I feel bad for the mom and pop investors, but something has to be done so homes can be more affordable. I agree. I 100% agree. And with the mom and pop investors, those are the ones that we're seeing that are just have a home in a neighborhood here, home in a neighborhood there. Those are not the ones that I'm concerned with because there's always going to be mom and pop investors. The ones that I'm concerned with are the big investors that we're seeing, the large corporations that are coming in and buying entire neighborhoods, or they're basically bought out a builder and the builder is building this community for the sole purpose of renting it out for this investor. Those are the ones that I have concerns with. Those are the ones that I'm watching closely because it takes out the middle class and the lower class from even having the option to buy affordable housing. Because if they're building an entire community for $300,000 or homes that would be roughly $300,000, but then they're not listing those for sale, that's taking inventory away from people that do potentially want to buy. And it's taking homes away from the inventory, which is then still creating the cycle that I was just talking about, where home prices are going to continue to rise. And then rental prices are going to increase. So my thing is that, the government keeps wanting to control inflation. The government wants to increase interest rates. Well, perhaps if you stopped letting these people have entire neighborhoods of rental properties, perhaps we would see a little bit of affordable housing. Perhaps we would start to see some of the interest rates come back down because buyers are getting into homes that are affordable. And now we don't have the housing crisis of lack of inventory. So how about we start putting regulations on entire corporations buying up entire neighborhoods? That's what I would like to see. While you keep raising interest rates, how about you put some regulations on that. That's definitely where I think that we need to start seeing things um, go. But I'm not in charge of the government. I don't get to make those choices. So I'm excited to see that Augusta made the top 10. That is one of the places I've been telling you we should be watching, because Augusta is one that for a long time has been overlooked. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. The Masters is there every year. So if any of you, that's something, drop in the chat if you have been to the Masters and you've seen the little town of Augusta. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot going on over there. There have been some corporations buy land over there, so there's job opportunities there. It's still a relatively affordable area, and it's in the top 10 across the nation, most affordable places to live. So my concern is going back to those rentals that we just talked about. What are we going to see as far as investment properties in Augusta? Are we going to start seeing a lot of investors, whether it's a mom and pop, whether it's corporations? Are we going to start to see a lot of that going on in the Augusta area? Because usually when you have affordable options, you start to see investment opportunities in those locations. And so that will be something that over the next few years, I really think that we're going to see Augusta pop off. We're going to see more building out there. And so if you're looking for affordable options, Augusta is one, Newnan is another, Monroe is another. They did not make the top 10, but they're definitely in the top 20. They're areas that I would definitely tell you to look at. ATAC, I think some type of regulations is warranted. I agree with you 100%. I think that if we don't start to see some regulations on that, we're just going to continue to have issues when it comes to affordability. I think that we're definitely going to start seeing a shift in how houses are being built. I know I've talked before about affordable housing options where wood is not really used, because wood is one of the most expensive things right now when it comes to construction. That's making builders still increase their prices. Well, what other options could we use? I've even seen recently 3D printed housing. That's amazing to me. So it's kind of ironic, but my son went to a program last summer and he made a 3D printed little thing for him. And I was like, wow, that's actually really strong. So now I'm seeing 3D printed housing. I'm seeing container houses. We're seeing tiny homes. And so all of the different options as far as affordable housing, I really think that we're going to start to see some of this come into play. Now, if you look at other countries, they've been doing a lot of this for a while. The US is kind of behind on that train because we've always been building houses the same way. What are we going to see in the next 5 to 10 years? I really think this is something that we're going to start to see pop off more. I know that there's some very specific builders here in the South that are doing that. I'm excited because I actually had the opportunity to go and tour a couple of them, and I'll be bringing you some videos here in the next couple of weeks that are going to be with those builders touring some of those properties. So make sure you tune in for that. For today, I'm signing out. I'll see you guys next week.